All right, looks like it's 7 o'clock here. We can just get going. Just so everyone knows, the video speaking and screen sharing functions are disabled for all the participants to avoid unauthorized persons. And you can leave and rejoin the meeting at any time. And you can communicate through the QA feature or by raising your hand. So welcome to the Allmendinger Playground Improvements Public Meeting. I am Hillary Hansel. I'm a park planner and landscape architect with the city. We also have Dan Perot with Michigan Recreational Construction. They're our playground consultant. And then we have Michelle Bennett, our community engagement specialist here at the city. So today, I'm sure many of you are already familiar with Zoom, but we'll just do a brief Zoom overview for how it works in this webinar format for a public meeting. And then Michelle will discuss this optional poll we have as well. I'll do a brief project overview, talk about the schedule. Then we'll spend some time reviewing some online survey feedback we received last year around this time. Spend a lot of time reviewing the proposed playground design, and then hoping to leave enough time, hopefully 20-30 minutes for questions, discussion towards the end. So with that, I'll pass it off to Michelle to talk about the Zoom technology.
Yeah, thanks, Hillary. If you hover over the bottom of your screen, there is a little icon that says Q&A. This will be the primary mode of communication tonight between the panelists here and our participants. So you can submit a question at any time and we will receive it. If it's relevant to the slides that we're on, we may answer it in real time or save them all to the end. If you have called in, then the option for you to share or submit a comment is to first press *9. So that will show us that you are raising your hand, and then we can unmute you for you to share your comment with the rest of the group. We're also going to launch an optional demographic questionnaire, so please don't feel obligated to answer this. But I just launched it and I will leave it open for most of the remainder of the session so that you can fill it out when it's convenient for you. We have recently just updated the questions if you've attended a few of these sessions before, so it may look a little different. And just to remind everyone, we do collect this information because we'd like to see who we're reaching through our communications and who's attending to participate.
And this is anonymous as well. So your name and detailed information will be attached to it.
Correct. Thank you.
Great. Well, with that, let's just get going into talking about Allmendinger Playground. The reason you're all here tonight, we appreciate you taking time out from your evening. I'm sure you're all familiar with where the playground is, kind of in this northwest quadrant of the park. We're here today because public input, your feedback is really important to us. Just so you know, this is not a full playground replacement, but rather an expansion of the existing playground. The existing play equipment, while it's older, it's still in acceptable shape. So there's not health, safety, welfare reasons for removing it at this time. As far as schedule, so many of you likely remember we sent out an online survey spring of last year. At that time, we'd anticipated to have construction underway that summer, and it didn't happen for a few reasons. But we were very impressed with the response we received. We received over 150 responses, which is well and above our average for neighborhood scale playgrounds. And, we did end up having to delay it. We had some staffing challenges at the moment. And then we were also working on our park and recreation open space master plan or PROS plan. So all those things we weren't able to quite get through this playground process in time in order to order equipment and have construction that year. So we're back. We're getting going early enough that we're anticipating that construction would be this summer or perhaps even early fall, but we'll be in 23. So plenty of time for feedback from tonight's meeting and afterwards to help inform the design direction. And just to spend a little time, since it has been a while since the online survey was completed, a little time just going over what we heard from all of you that filled that out. So we all know, Allmendinger is very beloved because of the extensive mature tree canopy, the shade it provides in the summer, just adds a lot of comfort. Having a restroom in the park is a big draw, obviously for younger children, but it just allows you to stay a little bit longer. And we did hear from a lot of you that people like the existing equipment, the swings, the merry-go-round, the climbing wall, the large slide. These were all things that you liked about the existing playground. We heard loud and clear, don't impact or remove existing trees. And I will tell you right now, that is not our intent and that's not our plan. We also heard the message, keep play equipment in the shade. Obviously a lot of benefits just from sun exposure to keeping things cool, and everyone loves that aspect about this park. Some of the things we heard about, that we could consider removing or replacing. One is this elevated sand table that you'll see here. We realize there's not really much sand out there anymore, and it doesn't really get used. It's pretty high. It can get kind of wet and dirty. The main play structure is also designed for younger children. Technically, it's the age range from 2 to 5 years old. But it's not very challenging, especially for even like the older kids from that age range. So, that play structure is pretty limited. Some of the things we heard about, to consider adding new play equipment, equipment for older kids, accessible play equipment, things that are more modern, monkey bars, zip line, and then items that inspire creative play or imaginative play, some things that are more open-ended. And, we asked also what would make the playground better and more comfortable for parents and caregivers. So wheelchair accessibility, the city parks is actually undergoing an ADA accessibility transition plan right now, where we've been evaluating accessibility in all our parks. So it's definitely at the forefront of everything we're doing. More benches, picnic tables, areas to park strollers. We do know there's some muddy and lower lying areas, especially kind of on the eastern edge. Play equipment for parents, wasn't totally sure what people were getting to on that one. We can talk about that more. And then, a common theme was better traffic control. So we know even in this image, Hutchins Street is pretty close to the playground, and there was the desire for some sort of barrier along there. And we also asked to see if there was interest in natural play elements. So this is something kind of over the last 5-6 years, the city's been experimenting with small kind of nature play elements within our existing playgrounds. We heard loud and clear, a lot of support. 87% said yes, they were interested in it at this playground. We also asked about sandboxes. Still a majority were in favor of that as well. And then natural play, for those that might not be as familiar, this is using natural materials. So stumps, logs, boulders, sand, these natural materials that provide a connection to the environment. They're also can be less prescriptive than traditional play equipment. So it can create more opportunities for, self-directed, creative, imaginative play. And, studies show that kids really, play in these environments longer. They don't get bored as quickly because of that creativity that they can inspire. And I totally, understand that this is a blurry picture, but just wanted to use it for a reference point before I show some of the plans or maps, of the changes we're looking at. So we're actually going to be leaving the existing play equipment that's kind of shown here on the left. All the existing play equipment, except for the elevated sand table, will remain. And so where we're looking to actually expand the playground is this kind of area near the sand table. And it's still beneath the canopy, still shaded. Shaded actually at the point that there's really not lawn or grass that's able to grow there. There's some existing picnic tables and things that we'll be taking out to put the play equipment in, but then we'll also be replacing those and adding new ones as well. So just wanted to kind of provide that reference point for what area we're talking about. And so here, this is a plan or map, and it can be a little tough to orient yourself. So north is up, Hutchins is here on the left. Don't be scared by all the red X's. We're not removing trees. I know it can look a little scary. The trees are actually on these black dots. So the black dots represent the different trunks and the bigger diameters versus the smaller ones. So we know where all of those are, and we're actively going to be designing around them. What you see here is just, we'll be removing some of the existing wood edging that kind of separates the different areas. So it's all going to be an interconnected wood chipped surface in the play area. And then, as I mentioned, we'd be removing the elevated sandbox, some existing benches, picnic tables, and a grill as well. And so this is kind of an overview. It shows the existing playground as well as the expanded playground area as well. We'll do some zooming in. I'll walk everyone through each element. I know it can be a little visually overwhelming, so we'll show lots of opportunities to look back here. One of the things I'd like to talk to you about first is this red dashed line along Hutchins. We're going to be working with our park operations or field staff to actually build a wooden fence along there. So it won't be a fully enclosed playground, but it'll just provide kind of a visual barrier, where parents can use it as a reference point to keep kids away, just kind of, one little reminder visually to kind of keep kids within the playground area. Another thing I just want to point out kind of on this overall plan is we're going to have a couple concrete connections to the existing walkway. And so what those are going to do, they'll be, we can kind of call them a dub down. They kind of ramp down into the wood chip play surfacing. And so it just allows that someone in a wheelchair can kind of make that transition down to the playground more smoothly. So with that, we'll kind of walk through each element. So fencing, we're looking for something similar to this. This was built by our staff out at the Leslie Park Golf Course. And the asphalt pathway that runs through here, we'll also look at repairing that or possibly even fully replacing it after the playground project is complete. We know that just with having equipment coming in and out, the path will get degraded even further, and it's in need of repair. So you can expect improvements to that pathway as well. And so zooming in on the expanded play area down here, I'm going to walk you guys through what each of these elements looks like. So to start off, we'll talk about this sand play area with a log crawl tunnel. And then we'll also talk about a new play structure. So we'll have two play structures. So the sand play area will be, kind of your traditional sandbox, but much larger. And we'll be using natural materials as like the edging around that. So logs and boulders, which are nice. It provides kind of a, tabletop almost that kids can kind of build on and play on. And then as parents and caregivers, it kind of provides an informal seat where you could perch if you're sitting near your children there. And then in the sandbox, we'll also be adding this log crawl tunnel. This is something that's not a natural material. It's just difficult to find, something out in nature that can mimic this. So it is one that's made of, I believe, concrete, and it's made to look like a log. But we find these are really enjoyable, and it's an enjoyable piece to kind of add to the creativity within the sand play area. And then the second play structure we're looking at, this is something, it's still a relatively small footprint. It's not going to be a huge structure just because of those constraints working within the existing trees. But it is something that's designed for older children. So it's designed for children 5 to 12 years. Dan could speak to this better than I, but these design age ranges are based on playground safety standards. And often what we find is that, even though it's designed for 5 to 12, it's still something that you'll see younger children on and typically able to enjoy as well. I know my children were on these as young as, 2 or 3 years old. But it is going to be a higher height, so there'll be steeper slides, more opportunity for climbing. So In addition to 3 slides, it'll have a loop ladder or monkey bars, an edge climber, so kind of providing this, different climbing experience. A crunch bar, I guess that could be something that an older, adult or caregiver could use. The typical ADA transfer platforms with guardrails, and one of these, they call them gizmo panels. It's kind of an infill panel that has different things that you can interact with. So this is a view of that same play structure just from above, kind of the top looking down. And so you can see it's not huge, but it has these different levels. So it's going to go up to a height of 5 feet, whereas the existing, younger children play structure that's out there, I believe, is only 3 feet high, possibly even less. So be some additional ways that older children can, enjoy, the traditional play structure out here. And so moving along, talking about some of these other elements out here, getting back to some of the natural play elements, we'll be looking at proposed boulder mountain. This is something new we're experimenting with. And then also a proposed timber dome. We have some of these in our parks. I believe we just put one out at Bromley Park a few years ago. So the boulder mountain, I will say we haven't done one of these before, and it won't necessarily look like this, but this is our inspiration. So mimicking children love climbing and, scaling rocks, looking for something that can be that gross motor heavy work, something that can be challenging for older children. So we'll see where we can kind of source boulders from, and how many we can fit out there. But this is, kind of the route that we're looking to go. If we aren't able to get quite this height, it could just maybe be a collection of larger boulders as well. But looking at a boulder mountain. And then the timber dome is kind of a quieter space. So it's a place that, overstimulated kids can go to, a sensory shelter. So you could have time for kind of self-regulating yourself, kind of calming down, or even gathering and socialing with peers. And then, the outer surface can also act as a climbing structure as well. And so the next thing we'll talk about is kind of this connection from the boulder mountain over to this horizontal tree trunk climber. So again, kind of experimenting with natural materials. We're looking at calling it a log jaunt, and then a stump trek, and then connecting over to this larger tree climbing element. So the log jaunt and stump steppers are really what they sound like. So the stumps are logs that have been, driven into the ground. They're at different heights. And, it's a great challenge for kids at a variety of ages, balance, coordination, just kind of doing your own gross motor planning. So it really kind of appeals to a broad age range. And then the log jaunt is kind of another thing we're experimenting with. Could be these kind of horizontal logs that, act as balance beams, and that, kids, it almost, gives you that feeling of exploring in the woods and the outdoors. So that would be kind of connecting these two play areas. And then, something we're excited about, and again, something a little newer is, just using a large tree trunk log, essentially as a climbing element. So this is a real tree. This is a project, I believe, out in Chicago, where a tree just had to be taken down, and they used it as an opportunity to integrate it into a natural playground. So here you can see a lot of the branches were, kind of kept intact, so they can be different perches and different, elements that children can explore. This is something that's great for gross motor activity. Again, getting back to, balancing, coordination, lots of opportunities for different kids to use it in different ways, different ages as well. You can see here, there's some, parents and caregivers that are helping some younger children navigate it and interact with it in different ways. So, so that's kind of the main play equipment that we're looking at. I will say, these more natural materials can be much more affordable than the traditional play equipment. So that's another reason, that we can just get more play value for the budget that we have to work within by using some of these elements. So we'll also be adding some additional seating as well. So we'll be adding 4 picnic tables. So, it'll be a net gain of 2 because we're impacting 2 that exist out there. And 2 of these picnic tables that we're adding will be accessible. So they'll connect to the main pathway. They'll have, a wheelchair seating space where someone can pull up there. And I've also seen people use these, for staging things like bikes, push toys, strollers. It's also nice to have buffer space for other users as well. And then we'll be, adding 1 new bench that, we're replacing that's out there currently, again, having some informal seating with logs. And just to give you a sense of where, some of the seating is proposed kind of around the edges here, we have, some picnic tables that are just embedded kind of into the existing landscape. Some of these ADA picnic tables right off the main pathway with that accessible concrete connection, and then an additional bench as well. So I know this is a little quick, but happy to move on to any questions and have some discussion. And I can go back to any of the slides, pull up any of these graphics. So happy to talk through this further. And I'm going to pass it over to Michelle to just remind you, from a technology standpoint, how you can ask questions or raise your hand.
Yeah, so just a reminder, if you want to submit a question or a comment to us, that you can hover over the bottom of your screen and this icon, the Q&A icon, should pop up. If you click on it, this will open up and your questions will come directly to Hillary, Dan, and I. And then we will read them out to the group so that Hillary and Dan can answer. And if you've called in, which looking at our participant list, it doesn't look like anyone called in, but you can be unmuted to speak if you click *9. So let me move over to the first question that we have submitted. And the question is the longevity of the tree climbers similar to non-natural structures?
Yeah, I would guess no, and I'll ask Dan for his input here. But I think, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but on a traditional play structure, we can probably expect to get 30 some years out of it, 20 to 30 years maybe. And maybe ours just get 30 years out of it because we have over 80 playgrounds here in our city parks. Dan, can you speak a little bit to what we've been seeing with the tree climbers? I know this one we're talking about possibly leaving the bark on, which could lead to deterioration real quickly.
Well, manufactured equipment typically lasts anywhere from 10 to 30. Some people push it really hard to 50 years. But the typical lifespan of playground manufactured equipment is in that, I would say 15 years is probably, 15 to 20 is probably the most that you're going to get out of it reasonably. And I know municipalities, for various reasons, push that and don't replace it as often because it is expensive. The natural materials, depending on what it is and the species of the, let's say boulders, are going to be around for a long time. They're not going to degrade. Different types of trees, the wood is quite variable. We try to typically use materials that are naturally or trees that are naturally rot resistant. So it kind of really depends of what the tree is. And I know the city is looking at trees that are they're having to take down because they're either in locations where they're dangerous or they're just failing. And so we're looking at using some of those, a tree like that here. So it kind of depends on what that species is, but we'd be looking for white oak, red oak, black locust, So it depends, and those are all more naturally rot resistant than some of the other species.
Yeah, and so it's something that's hard to say, and I'd add, just with Allmendinger specifically, just being a shaded area, this one will probably deteriorate a little more quickly than, a sunnier playground. So it's something to think about, but I think it's also something that, can be monitored over time. And, that's part of the play feature, seeing it as it changes. And
Yeah,
frankly, something that's much easier to replace than, your traditional kind of steel and plastic play structure from a cost standpoint.
that's exactly right. It'd be penny, a fraction of the cost to replace that tree should it
Mhm.
degrade to a point where you wanted to replace it. It would be a fraction of the cost.
Yeah, and especially, the ice storm and everything we've had lately, we have lots of trees that have been impacted the city. So as Dan mentioned, we'd be looking to see, if there's an opportunity to use one that's already slated for, removal for some other reason. And if not, we'll look to other sources as well, but we won't be chopping down some 100-year-old tree to make this
Yeah.
climate.
Yeah, we work with tree companies, local tree companies that are taking down trees for development. Usually it's some type of development that's coming in. And so we work with them to get the trees so that they just don't get chipped or turned into firewood, and we repurpose them for playgrounds.
Mhm.
Okay, great. The next question is, as a senior citizen who uses the park almost daily, I was hoping to see more than one additional bench. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, we can definitely look at adding additional benches. I'd be interested if you're, and you can maybe type an answer in here, but if you'd be interested in one more focused around the playground or one that's elsewhere in the park, but definitely something we can consider. Allmendinger is a really popular and heavily used park, so I'm sure there's opportunities.
Okay. How long will construction take?
Dan, what do you think? 4 or 6 weeks? When are we
Yeah, I
looking
would
at that
say in the
window?
3 to 6 week time frame, something like that. It's
Yeah.
kind of, if we're doing the construction, we want to close that window as much as possible. So we'd make sure that we had all of the materials at hand. And then once we get into the construction phase, we're going to try and, wrap it up and make sure that it's not out of commission or it would be out of commission for the shortest period of time that we could reasonably. Weather has something to do with it, although that's a site that we're not going to have a lot of problem just because of the way the land is there. I don't see that. Some sites are real muddy if we open them up, and we're not really even going to open up this site at all because we
Mhm.
can't because of all the trees.
Right.
So it's,
Placing things on the site, yeah.
yeah, so it's going to be pretty straightforward. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I would say the very outset 6 weeks, but I would think more like 3 and maybe even shorter, but I don't want to, I think I
Yeah,
just said that, but I'm not going to say that.
yeah, so hopefully not too long.
Yeah.
Okay, the next question is about the equipment. Is there anything that can be done to improve the safety of the climbing wall? The ladder and steps are very small and tricky when people are going down.
Hmm. I have a picture of it up here. Let me see if I can scroll back to that. Dan, do you have any, I don't know if you remember that equipment. We showed a picture.
Well, that's where you run into that issue with equipment that's designed. That would be an older piece specifically for older children, and they would have, so it's got more challenge built into it, and it wouldn't be as appropriate for younger children. And
Yeah.
there'd be certain number of children who are older who may not have the necessary skills to really use that. But
Mhm.
that's kind of where we're trying to build in more a broader range of pieces of equipment or um, uh, challenges based on abilities
Mhm.
and developmental abilities and developmental age. So that's something that you really, I mean, it's just kind of the way that it is. You might be able to look at something that's lower, but similar to that. So,
Yeah.
and then the boulder climbing wall, or the boulder, what did you call it? The boulder,
I think Boulder.
Boulder Mountain. Boulder
Yeah.
Mountain is going to be kind of that same kind of experience.
Mhm.
But yet I think that'll have a broader age range, because it'll have challenges for a broader range of abilities. So
So
maybe
hopefully by
that's
having, more climbing options, you won't be stuck with, just this one specifically. If we're able to have the horizontal log climber, the tree kind of laying on the ground, we'll have climbing, as well as that boulder mountain. So,
yeah.
Okay. So this next question starts with a positive comment, so I'll read that out. The new equipment looks great. I like all the natural elements. But one concern they have is that on Hutchins, people coming in to use the park try to park on the east side of Hutchins, which is a no parking zone. Would it be possible to put in additional signs to make it clear that this is a no parking zone? And they also mentioned that they like the idea of the fence to make it clear that children shouldn't run into the street from the playground. So this is a question about parking and signage.
yeah, definitely. I don't know how many signs are out there right now, but we can definitely look at adding some additional ones. Again, because of all the kids in the playground, I think it's really important to just keep vehicles away from that edge of the playground so that there's lots of visibility for drivers, in case someone does cross there. So yeah, happy to look into that.
Okay, great. Some more positive comments. We have a family on the phone of frequent Allmendinger playground users. 2 of the 3 kids are listening in, and they want to share some positive feedback. They love the natural playscape elements, and the Boulder Mountain got many oohs and ahs from us. It reminds them of the Big Rock Nature Preserve in Charlotte, North Carolina. So thank you for the creativity, and we can't wait to come play on the new stuff this summer or fall. So thank you for submitting that comment. The other 2 that we have in here, so I just want to let the person know who requested more benches that I do see your 2 comments here on some locations. So we, after this meeting, these answers get downloaded and we will have access to these 2 responses for them to consider. So another question here is, will the slide deck be made available for neighbors who couldn't make it?
Yes, we'll upload it onto our website tomorrow. So that's, you can get to it through a2gov.org and then / we'll actually have it on our park planning page. So it'll just be park planning. You can also navigate to that page from our parks overall website. But yeah, happy to point neighbors there and let them. We could also look at getting a recording as well, and post that so that they can see all the Q&A and kind of listen to the explanation. So might just take a few more days to get the recording posted, but happy to put the slide deck on there tomorrow.
Okay, there's one more question here. Will parts of the playground be accessible during the construction?
I'm gonna guess no. Just with equipment moving around, we'll probably have to close the whole thing. I don't think we want children playing too close to where everyone's working. Dan, do you feel otherwise, or?
I
Maybe
don't
we're
know.
mixing
I think that we may be able to put a fence up, segregating the active construction zone for part of the time, but
yeah.
maybe it's a good opportunity to go visit a neighborhood, another park in the city, and just see what else is out there for while the 3-ish weeks this one shut down. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
I'll
We
give
can
that a
try
big
as much
maybe.
as- A big maybe. Yeah, I would agree with that. And, you know, in the past, we've been trying to do our playground renovations kind of like late summer, early fall. You know, a lot of them have been happening in September. You know, obviously as summer with school out, they get a lot more use. So sometimes with that timing, we can kind of avoid the peak use. We'll kind of see what the schedule looks like for this, you know, as we go forward, but that's something we kind of look at timing wise.
Okay, that's all of the questions that we have for now. There are no others in the queue.
Are there any images anyone would like to see again, or you can scroll to, you know, a different slide if there's something you want to look at a little bit more. I know I went through things pretty quickly.
We can give people another minute to type in their responses. We can always come back to the questions as well.
Yeah, you know, this is a good opportunity. I'm gonna zoom through my presentation really quick. Hopefully everyone's eyes and brain is okay as I go to the end. You know, while everyone takes a minute to kind of think if there's other things you have questions about, I just wanted to talk a little bit about our Adopt a Park program. I have an easier way to get here. Let's see, so our Adopt a Park. So we have staff that work with park adopters, which are volunteers, and they can help with special projects, the park, beautifying parks. You know, sometimes they're doing plantings near signs, just helping with park maintenance. Sometimes there's special projects that you know, residents and adopters are interested in seeing in their park. So this is beyond just the playground, but if you want to get involved with Allmendinger or even another park, the contact information is included here. So the coordinator, Melissa, can be reached at adopt-a-park at a2gov.org. So if that's something anyone is interested in. And then I'm just going to leave this up here. You know, my email address is here if anyone has questions or thoughts, you know, maybe, you know, if you think about it more tonight, or if you share this with some of your neighbors and have some questions and feedback you'd like to provide, happy to hear that. And, you know, the project website will be uploading a copy of the presentation, and then hopefully a recording a little later is again a2gov.org/park planning.
Okay, we don't have any more questions coming in. Just thanks for a great presentation. This was really helpful. But other than that, no more comments or questions.
Well, thanks everyone. You know, we can kind of hang out here a little bit longer, but you know, feel free. I know everyone has busy evenings, so you know, that kind of ends the formal part of our presentation, but we'll hang around a little bit longer just to see if there's any other questions. But thank you for taking this time and for, you know, all the thoughtful questions and feedback. We really appreciate it.
Okay, we had one more question come in. But can you define a zip slide?
Dan, this was a term that was used on that play structure we chose from Game Time. It looks like it's just a shorter, steeper slide, maybe. Do you know what that term means?
What was it?
They called it a zip slide.
Oh, it's a marketing name for a slide. So, yeah, I don't know that it's just a marketing name.
Yeah.
Just think it's a plastic slide
Yes. Yeah.
with a cool name.
Thanks for the question.
Well, we only have 3 attendees left, so it's possible they're writing in some comments for us. So thank you for the presentation. This is all very exciting for those of us who regularly use the park.
Thank you.
Awesome. So nice to get such positive feedback.
Yeah, I took my kids to this park playground, for many years, still go. So we're excited about it too, as a park user and designer.
Okay, well, it looks like everyone else has left the meeting.
Okay.